We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else. As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
And you just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam. So who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football season, all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL Podcast. Steve Palazzolo here with Sam Monson. Voice is getting a little better.
Is it? This is going to be a grind for both of us.
It's my Jordan flu game. Minus the flu. It's just my voice game.
The voice game.
The voice game.
You got 2 hours in you with that voice.
I felt like my voice was doing much better this morning.
Yeah?
And now, then, it'll come and go.
Huh.
I might get some Kirk Cousins voice cracks in there.
So this is the product of the NFL Combine.
This is. We did a PFF NFL Daily, winners and losers on the Combine, just to whet the appetite a little bit. We're going to get more in depth here, but we are clearly the losers of the Combine.
Amongst the losers.
I
think really everybody that was there for the length of time that we were there come out of Indy as losers of the Combine. So, if you look at the PFF YouTube channel, you'll see a little behind-the-scenes video of some of the stuff we did in Indy. It's not truly behind the scenes, though, because the camera didn't come with us, late at night to Prime, for example, and,
right.
All the other bars that people go to. And you talk to some people, and, they're saying, this is the week where my age really becomes a factor, Because we've talked about this before, in season, when you have to do the late night and then the early morning, it's like one day's fine, right?
Yeah,
Anybody
right.
can do one day.
Right.
2 hours sleep, get going, you're good. You do it 2 days in a row, all of a sudden that starts to hit. And with Indy, you're doing it 5 or 6 days in a row, and you're just dead. So I got this Whoop band. My dad gave me one for Christmas. I don't really know how it works yet, but it tracks stuff, right? So I have it on. And it shows you something called recovery, which I don't know what it is, but,
You don't have it left? You don't have any left?
Yeah, so, generally speaking, it bounces between 80 and 100% recovery on a daily basis, and you're good to go. But when you look at the week of the Combine, it started off at 100%, I think, the Sunday before we left for the Combine, and then you just watch it fall off a cliff on this graph. Yeah, look, there it is. It just nosedives. 98% down to 56 to 36 to 11, and then hovered around this miserable state of 20% or less recovery. There was just no recovery going. And then the top, it says, your body is struggling to recover. There's simply no recovery happening at this point. You go to sleep, you just about survive to the next day, and you go again.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Right. It's just nice to see it in graphical form. This is exactly what happens at the Combine.
I've seen people put memes together for what happens during Combine Week. There's nothing better than that. The chart of your recovery.
It's literally showing you what happens.
Decreasing.
You are just being destroyed. And the reason why is because everybody's kind of doing their work, and, Radio Row or teams in the meeting rooms or teams in everyone's doing stuff, right? And then you get to the evening, you go have dinner, and then you get to the point where you can actually go talk to people.
Then
right?
it's networking time.
Yeah, networking time. So the entirety of the NFL world, the ecosystem, is all in Indy, which is a tiny town with not much going on, which means they're concentrated in 3 bars. So you go out to those 3 bars and you see all these people you haven't seen for months, for years potentially, and all the important NFL people you want to be talking to and getting interesting things and deals done, like free agency, the stuff that's about to happen, all that kind of stuff starts.
Happened last week.
Yeah, in the
steakhouses.
bar and steakhouses in Indy, which means that everybody is out until the wee hours of the morning. And then if you're Austin Gale, you're pushing it to like 5 until Prime hands out those Uncrustables for free for everybody that's still there when they finally kick them out of the bar.
That's amazing.
And that doesn't leave an awful lot of time left to sleep and then get up and do work the next day.
Yeah, so I missed the one podcast because most of my work was behind the scenes.
So this is what I want to hear about, right? From your side of things. I don't know how much people know this, but we both started off and we were both 100% data to begin with because everybody in PFF was, right?
Right.
And then as the years went on, we pivoted to more of the content side of things, and that's how we're here on this podcast. And then you kind of pivoted back, and you're now like 90% B2B side, the business side of things. And just this, the podcast is your 10% left on the public side of things. I'm the other way around. I'm basically 100% content. So I wasn't in any of these meetings this year. So talk. What happened? What did you find out?
You want the dirt?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not sitting there like workshopping free agent moves or draft picks with the teams or anything, but we had 35 meetings in 3 days. That's most teams. Some teams we meet more remotely. Some teams have multiple meetings. And it's a lot of just, reviewing what we've done. I mean, because we're providers of their data. And, so it's a lot of, tech stuff, logistical stuff. And then there was a lot of talking about PFF IQ, our new subscription for teams that about the quarter of the league has right now, which is more involved with decision-making and giving the proper tools to use the PFF data in every draft and free agent decision. So really good very receptive, I'd say, across the league of that. But here's the biggest takeaway. When we were in our early meetings, Sam, 5-6 years ago, the NFL was not equipped to use a big database of information. We had a big bowl of information for teams. And then we had to create our own products to interpret it and visualize it and all that stuff. 5 or 6 years later, they're still using that. They still need that. That's PFF Ultimate. But now they're actually more equipped to use raw data. So one of the big takeaways is when you guys create WAR and all these new metrics that, again, have to pretty much be parsed off to team clients, they want that in raw data form because they're coming far more equipped on the analytical side. Whereas 5 or 6 years ago, there was one person, there was a video coordinator who would just get the data in and they didn't have anybody to do anything with it. We have to flatten the data, Sam, a couple times. We have to reflatten it. You'll know that. So that was interesting to me is the NFL now is more equipped to do stuff with data. And they're looking for big data, right? There's a big data bowl. They're hiring people from the big data bowl. They want to have computer vision data, change of direction and speed data on college players. That's really a hot topic. So the NFL's moving in the right direction, I'd say, across the board.
Yeah.
And every team, as I always say, is completely different, right? Different levels of
course,
usage. And that still is the case.
But I think that's a really interesting takeaway from that week that, years ago, there were some teams that had no earthly idea what they were doing with any of this stuff, right? You would sit there and in those meetings and some of the things you were hearing, it's like, unless we do this for you, nothing is happening, right? Like you are completely incapable of getting. Are you struggling there with that?
My mic just keeps. No, come on. You're supposed to let me do this off camera. It just keeps.
I mean,
It's slowly dropping.
I was going to let it go when you were the thing was just dropping on its own, but then suddenly every single piece of the articulated
it was like on the table
was falling apart. There's like 5 different pivot points, and every one of them.
It looks like your combine week health. It just slowly declines.
Anyway, a few years ago, you would hear these NFL teams, and they would talk, and it's like, unless we do this for you, you're not doing any of this. Like, it's just not happening. You don't have anybody in the building capable of doing any of this work. And now every NFL team is capable of doing something, right? It's a case of what they're doing, where they prioritize it, and then the best teams, obviously, as it's always been, have been doing all this stuff by themselves or well capable of doing all of it, are at the cutting edge and just want as much data as humanly possible to let them do as much as humanly possible.
It was also interesting. Sometimes you have pretty intense sit downs with coaches coaches who are involved in game management and replay decisions, challenge decisions, 4th down decisions, and it's not about having data and information. Every team's using some sort of reference point. There it's about speed. It's coaches who are like in the booth, in the ear of the coach, doing whatever they can to find an advantage, to just be on point, to communicate effectively. So that's interesting too. So the more the NFL gets all of the same data. They've been sitting on NGS data, next gen stats, the chip data for years. It is about finding those edges, whatever they might be. So, I mean, it's how baseball evolved. It's how other sports evolved is, it started with simple stuff in baseball, like, hey, get on base more, on base percentage. In football, it's well beyond a lot of the Twitter decisions, like, should we go for it on fourth down? Like, every team's at least making those decisions. And whether they make the right or wrong decision, for the most part, they're thinking about it, right? They're analyzing it. They're preparing for it during the week. Analytics in the NFL is not just fourth down decisions. It's everything that they do. They're studying and using data, and it's really come a long way, I'd say, in recent years.
One other big takeaway I had was, and this continues to freak me out every time we go anywhere, is how many people tell me that they listen to the podcast.
I know, we ran into a bunch.
Yeah, and it's one thing if it's just somebody saying, and this happened a few times, where they're like, hey, I'm so-and-so, a big fan of the podcast, love what you guys do. It's like, yeah, great, thanks for listening, it's awesome, right? Fine, I can deal with that. It's like real NFL people, they're like, hey, I listen to the podcast, and all of a sudden you have to run that like mental, fact-finding query of like, what have I said that's relevant to this person on the podcast? That
have we trashed your decision-making and your organization
that is
recently?
All of a sudden acutely important in this conversation. So that's always a little bit freaky. Also, we had a bunch of people tell us how much they like the charity stuff that we're doing, which I think is kind of cool to hear. Like actual, real NFL people being like, that's a cool way of using your platform. We also, I think, potentially came up with the next charity drive simply through me being insulted by everybody's take on what it would be.
We were at a private party and hypothesizing whether or not how fast you could throw.
Well, we started off by saying, we're annoyed that we bought this radar gun for the last charity thing, right, to see you top out at 74 miles an hour pitching. And I was sort of saying, I'm so annoyed that we never thought to just put somebody normal, like a randomer, on just throw and see what they would pitch in a radar gun, right? Because, with the greatest of respect, Mr. Former minor league pitcher, wasn't a lot of heat coming down, And I was like,
it's fine.
I'm curious how close I would get to that. And I voiced that sentence, and immediately somebody was like 50. I was like, what? So I was disgusted. And then so I started like surveying the crowd, right? Come on, like somebody that's never pitched a baseball before, but is human and can throw things. What would they max out on the radar gun? And the consensus appeared to be like mid-50s. There were some ridiculous lunatics out there saying 40-something. And then, like, the optimistic end were saying you could top 60. And I was saying, I will guarantee that the first number is a 6. Guarantee it. I'm giving you 14 miles an hour over that miserable slow ball you were throwing. And I'm still hitting 60.
So this could be one where there are two charities. I don't want to take away from a charity, but I was going to say there could be two charities. If you hit 60, it goes to mine. If you hit, it goes to yours. If you're under 60, it goes to mine.
No, I'd say we just like the
or we double it or something.
Like your thing, we just raise the money and see what the number is. I'm 100. I'll add in more money if I don't get to 60.
Now I feel like I need to grab a bat.
I'm 100% sure. Oh yeah, you got a bat.
All right,
me
Sam,
at 60,
you pitch to me.
I'm sure ding that thing out of the park.
I raked in high school.
I am 100% sure I can hit 60. Stone sent me this video, so I've got two reference points now, right? One is your 74. Which really wasn't fast. And two, Stone sent me this video of some MLB pitcher that like his stick is he pitches like 45, and because everybody's used to facing like 90, nobody can handle it, right? And him pitching 45 looks like somebody pitching left-handed.
Who was throwing 45?
I don't remember what his name is. Big fat guy just dinks the ball at 45 in the majors, right? And him throwing 45 looked like somebody lofting the ball left-handed. And you throwing 74 didn't look fast. So if I can split the difference of those two, that's 60.
Yeah.
That seems easy.
Yeah, seems easy.
I'm telling you, I'm not having it. There's no way I'm under 60. Roll out of here right now. We'll go hit 60.
Can we get thoughts in YouTube? Yeah. By the way, this baseball talk is driven by Sam, not me this time around.
Doesn't matter. Still in there. It's your tally. Yes. Send us emails, send us messages. Back me up that I will hit 60. NFL Podcast at PFF.com is the email address. PFF NFL Pod on Twitter is the Twitter address. There's just no way. 60. It's not high.
Speaking of the charity drives, go check out Sam's Pins tweet and my Pins tweet. We took a little, we're slowing down. Are you slowing down?
I don't know. I haven't looked in a while. What are we at?
Well, we need help over here.
1,116.
Okay, I'm still working from behind. It might be 28-3 here. We're working from behind over here, but on my side, raising money to see me do combine drills. We just saw, like, don't you want to see me try to match what Jordan Davis did? I got no shot of doing anything close. So see me do combine drills, raising money for Heritage House with my poorly cropped video. I need to change the picture. Maybe that'll attract more people. But I'm only at $245. But look, I was just with a bunch of the guys from Heritage House yesterday, and I just want to reiterate the stories of the men in this recovery program, some who used to be homeless, some who have been in jail for the majority of their life, completely changed lives. So that's what it's all about. That's what we're raising money for on my side. And appreciate everybody that's already donated and those who are going to help us get over the hump and get to that $2,500 so you can see me do the combine drills.
I think you need to pivot and, you need you and the combine drill. It's just not a draw. People are not, it's not connecting with the people.
Do I pivot back to like the table thing?
I think you need to pivot
the
back
mic's
to
just getting, I'm just going to let it roll. I'm just going to let it go.
You need to pivot
It gets
back
lower
to
every time you push back to the camera.
That the people want to see. And I think more people want to see you launch yourself through a table.
I saw Sting, who's almost 63, the wrestler, not the musician.
I got it, yeah.
Jump through like a triple-decker table last night.
Well, there you go. If he can do that in his 60s.
Old friend Tony Khan really making the old men work for it.
He can do that in his 60s. You've got the body of a 60-year-old. I mean, it's about the same, right?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure if Sting can do it, I can do it. So I will think about it. Let us know.
Just trying to help
if I pivoted to the table, would we have a better shot here?
Yeah, look, Josh Liskowitz just sent me a thing saying 11-year-olds throw 60. I got this. Easy.
Yeah, that's not true.
It is. It's a Little League pitcher.
Gas in Little League.
It still exists. If a Little Leaguer can throw 60, I can throw 60. Come on. There's a degree of, adult strength that you have. I'm not having it. I'm throwing 60. And we're going to raise money doing it.
Are you going to push yours at all?
I don't need to push mine. I'm
okay, you're doing well.
Sunshine Kids.
All right. The people have waited long enough. Let's get to the NFL Combine.
Okay.
I'm going to start with this question.
Okay.
Are the kids just faster these days?
Are the kids just faster?
Didn't
they change the turf in Lucas Oil a while ago?
Is that what it was?
I think somebody was saying there's new turf there at some point, which probably helps, right? I mean, they're not replacing the turf with things that make you slower.
I really think so. We had some impressive times Thursday night. They were unofficial, even when they became official.
Well, hang on. So the first thing to point out is that they've changed the order that they do things in for the combine, right?
That's what I was going to get to.
Okay, fair enough. That these kids work out in, right? It used to be the things were separate days. Now they've sort of shoved all the workout stuff onto the same day. The bench is earlier in the day from the workouts. So what you're seeing is immediately massive swathes of people are boycotting the bench press. Because I'm not going out to rep 225 pounds as many times as humanly possible and then going out there and doing drills where I actually need that muscle again. So a ton of people are just not benching. 3 wide receivers in total benched. And when they do the bench, they make them go up on the mic and individually state to the crowd that I'm choosing not to work out, blah, blah, I'll be working out my pro day.
That seems a little.
Well, so it made sense when there was 3 people opting out, right? And you wanted to peer pressure / shame them into doing it, right?
Which also is probably ridiculous.
Whatever. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with disincentivizing just opting out of the workout because I don't want to do it here.
And it makes shame that I announced that I will not bench press.
Exactly. Today. So they make them do that, and it's fine when there's only a couple of people. But when the entire wide receiver group is opting out, and you make them individually one after the other state that, it's just absurd. It's 10 minutes of people on the mic saying, "Hi, I'm blah blah from wherever. I'm not working out today. I'll be working out on my pro day." It's just ridiculous. But then it got to the end, the one guy who chose to bench, and he was like, "My name's Josh Johnson. And I will be benching," literally drops the mic, walks off, and there was a round of applause, cheers from the crowd as the one guy decided to bench. I want to see Steve dressed as Frodo from Lord of the Rings and do a scene. He has the hair, and the irony would be awesome. That would be an excellent charity drive suggestion.
Look, anything, I'm open. I'm open to more things. I hate acting.
Who's going to be Sam? Who's going to be Sam? It's not going to be me. I'll put that out right there. I am not going to be Samwise Gamgee for this little weird-ass Lord of the Rings recreation you're doing.
I detest acting in general. Very uncomfortable with it.
You need to find because Samwise is larger than Frodo, so you need to find, you and Daniel Fa'alele would make a good Samwise Gamgee. Well, I don't know if you can convince him to do that, but
we should have done that last week then.
True.
When we were both in Indy together.
Or, Jordan Davis. There's a couple of those guys in Indy you could have latched onto.
I'm sure we could track them down.
All the time, the good ideas come just a week after you need them.
Let's get our people on that. What are we talking about? The kids running fast.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing. So, yeah, I think the not having to bench is probably a thing. I really think if you look at the differences, there's always been differences in Combine 40s and Pro Day 40s. And there's multiple reasons for that. One of them, you get more training time at Pro Day. Maybe Pro Day, it's obviously got a different surface at Pro Day. Maybe Penn State's got a little incline to their workout facility. I wonder if the scouts bring bring a level.
Spirit level?
Yeah.
Drop it down?
I hope they bring a level to
Some
Penn
of the
State.
stories are great. By the way, the other thing about Indy is that with the rejigging of the schedule and stuff, it's on later. So it's like because of the primetime stuff.
Right.
The workouts are later than they used to be, which almost certainly affects it in some way, shape, or form. We were talking to an agent.
Can you let me set up my points? Because that was the point I was going to get. You keep cutting me off.
All right. Okay. Say that point.
The combine starts later.
Well done.
Thanks.
Great point, Steve.
The kids aren't sleep deprived.
Yeah.
The kids.
So we were talking to an agent who was saying he prefers it this way, right? Because in the old days, it was like one thing after another. You just got launched through the whole thing. Now, you kind of have time to have a nap in the middle of the day, eat some food, all those kinds of things, like real food.
And it was nice of the NFL to allow the kids to eat.
Oh, yeah.
They unbubbled, and they're going to let them actually eat food.
By the way, nice. If you've been the behind-the-scenes thing in Indy, like the absurdity of the concept of a bubble when you see the stuff that happens after hours in Indy. What, like, NFL coaches were going to wander into prime, have Mike Renner, hanging all over them, and then, go back to the bubble? That was the way this was supposed to work?
Yeah.
That's not a great plan.
Was prime shoulder to shoulder again? I didn't make my way over there.
Very much so, yes.
I made my way to the other places where it was shoulder to shoulder.
Renner gave one of the most awkward introductions to anybody I've ever seen in my life. You know when he's the awkward chat-up lines type of thing? Renner basically did that to Matt LaFleur.
Come on, you can't give too much behind the scenes.
No, this is okay. I'm 100% sure Renner will have told the story himself or Austin on their podcast. So Renner just sidles up to Matt LaFleur after half an hour of psyching himself up and leans over to him and says, "Matt, shareholder."
That's amazing.
LaFleur didn't, whatever the desired effect was to elicit, didn't get it. Didn't get it.
I lose a little respect for Matt LaFleur, not respecting his boss like that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well,
sure.
Sometimes
Shareholder.
you need a little bit of recalcitrance in your attitude.
And I got to meet Mark Brunell.
You did?
That was another good.
We got that photo as well? You got that photo, right? Didn't Rick send it to you?
It's on, Rick has it.
You let Mark Brunell walk past you twice. The first time you didn't even notice him.
I was mid-conversation.
Yeah.
Let me send this to Tyler.
Your hero walked right by you. And I was like, how did you just let that happen? And as soon as you realized it was Mark Brunell, you ran after him. And then you lost him because he disappeared in the bathroom or something.
Josh Norris, Hayden Winks, we're in the middle of a conversation with them. I apologize because I know Josh listens to us sometimes. I apologize. I left you guys mid-conversation. Not that you guys care. Right. You were on to the next thing anyway. Yeah. But I left mid-conversation to go track down Brunell. Then I got really nervous.
Right. Well, then 5 minutes later, you still hadn't resurfaced. So I thought you were stalking Brunell wherever he'd gone. I went to find you just standing there in the hallway with no Mark Brunell. And then he emerged from the bathroom from behind you. Again, walked right by you, and you just tightened up and was can't talk to anybody.
Can't do it.
And then Rick, being the superhero that he is, saw, did you see Mark Brunell was there?
Mark was busy.
And then immediately just drags you to take a photograph with Mark Brunell. Rick was the facilitator here. Without that, you got nothing.
I can't find the photo.
But the important point, we tweeted it out somewhere, I think. The important point here is that Mark Brunell was an NFL quarterback, and a good one, for quite a period of time, and you made him look like a child.
Yeah.
I just would like to submit that for evidence that I am not 5'2". You're just that freaking huge.
I make everybody. Oh, I see what you're saying. But Mark's old. He's probably shrunk a little bit.
My week at the combine is at least 30% people going, "Oh wow, you're not this tall." Yes, I know that. That's him. That's the effect you have on
Everybody
people.
thinks you're 5'7" because of
No, everyone thinks I'm like 5'2".
5'2".
And then they realize it's just you.
We ran into somebody that's actually 5'2". It's pretty
There's
drastic.
quite a lot of those people in Indy. There's a lot of really tall people. Hey, there you go. There's Brunel. See?
Look, it's me and Mark.
Look at that. That's ridiculous.
He is so upset right there.
He didn't.
He's
I don't
like,
think he was loving the occasion.
I'm just trying to meet somebody for dinner and
Right.
make this happen quickly. I was like, Mark, do you remember that play in the 96 playoffs when you leaped over the guy and scored and picked up an extra 10 yards?
Like, okay, Brunel was never
cool.
the tallest human in the world, but
6'1",
the man's
6'1", 214.
Right. The man's 6'1", and you make him look like a small
Next to 7'1",
child.
314,
Yeah.
give or take. All right, let's get back. Let's get back on track here.
What were we talking about?
The kids are faster these days.
Oh, I see. Yes. So there's a few things that go into it.
Yeah,
I shot of that.
I really think just not being sleep deprived, right? I mean, when you're
Big
talking
part of
about being at the pinnacle of your athletic performance, sleep is huge, right? Like sleep is just important
I mean,
for your
we've just been
job.
talking about the effect of the combine, right? You saw what it did to the Whoop Band, the recovery.
Yeah,
If you're like day
If you
2
don't
of interviews, 5 a.m., wake up call for medicals and
you're
stuff.
in trouble. So the receivers kicked it off with some impressive times. We saw Aidan Hutchinson have a great workout with short arms. We saw Christian Watson, the receiver from North Dakota State. You want to just highlight? Let's just highlight some of these players and what it means.
Okay.
Before we do that, though, reminder that the PFF NFL Podcast is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps advance your money moves. Buying your first home? Planning to start a family? Wondering how to make your money grow? Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. All right, I want to discuss some of the big names here.
Big names. Can I start with my guy first?
Go for it.
Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin
Little
the
names.
third.
Yeah.
He's the guy that we've been talking up here as a potential mid-round speedster, a guy that just wins, was dominant in the Senior Bowl, all these kinds of things. So the first thing that happens is you get the weigh-ins, right? You get the official size measurements. And that's where it wasn't great for Calvin, right? 5'8", 170 pounds, 30-inch arms. By the way, Calvin Austin is 5'8", and Aidan Hutchinson is 6'7", and there's like 2 inches difference between their arms. Like, what is up with that? 9.25-inch hands, so bigger than Kenny Pickett. Those aren't great numbers, You're looking at a guy like that, and you're like, there's a limited history of success at that size. If you're going to be that size, you need to have freakish workout numbers, and he did. So 4.32, really fast, 39-inch vertical. 39-inch vertical for a guy that small. 135-inch broad jump, which was like, 11'3" or something. Like, he's jumping 11'3" horizontally, and he's 5'8" in height. 6'6", 3 cone, really fast, 4.07 short shuttle. So all the numbers for Calvin Austin were good. I mean, that's what you see on tape. You saw it in the workouts as well. He just moves with that lightning quickness. Like, again, I've told this story before. You see these people show up at training, and they're really small. You're like, that guy must be fast as hell. Otherwise, there's literally no purpose to him in this practice. Calvin Austin's got that. Really small, but moves, like a jitterbug. He is.
So
awesome.
What does he look like at the NFL level for you? Where does he fit in based off what you've seen?
So, I mean, obviously when you have that kind of speed and size, you get pegged as a slot receiver only. But he reminds me a little bit of Santana Moss, but smaller, right? And it's not like Santana Moss was big, but specifically slighter. Like, Santana Moss was pretty put together. Like, he had some girth to him despite being short, and he was still, I think, 5'10 or 5'11. Like, he wasn't really short. So if you just, like a mini Santana Moss. And that's great. Like, those guys survive on the outside, right? As long as you can defeat press coverage, just the quickness you have makes it difficult to get hands on you. And you've seen that at the Senior Bowl. You've seen that in his college tape as well. It's not as easy to press a guy like that as you would think, just by being bigger.
The mic's officially fallen all as far as it can go.
Well, then there's no need to worry any further.
I'm not going to touch it anymore. Okay, the Austin's currently number 110 on the PFF draft board.
Yeah.
Renner's reshaking the board this week.
Post-combine, right?
Yeah, I think he's going to move up.
Yeah.
The other receiver is Christian Watson, who's at 104, and he's being rumored to go in the first round.
We had like a Calvin Johnson-esque workout.
He did. So part of what I want to do here is kind of like look at how guys worked out and what that looks like historically. But Christian Watson, pull up his numbers really quick.
6'4", 208 pounds. By the way, also only 32.5-inch arms. 4.36 40, so that's Megatron-esque. 38.5-inch vertical, 136-inch broad, which if Calvin Austin's was 11'3", that makes that 11'6". So those are pretty spectacular numbers at that size.
And so there's not a whole lot of 6'4" wide receivers historically that ran sub 4.4. Calvin Johnson, Randy Moss. I mean, there's a few others that weren't as good, but it's not a huge list. And I'm trying to get my list to load here so I can see it, so I can read off some of the other names.
The list of people that tall and that light is also pretty small. Like, it's not generally a body type that makes it this far, because people thought for a while that Drake London was going to fit that category, and then London comes in like 10 pounds heavier, just so it's not an issue. But this sort of 6'4", under 210 pounds thing is not a usual body type.
Right, and so with Watson, who had a really good Senior Bowl. So here's my question with the receivers. There's speed receivers all over the place. We haven't even talked about Amari Cooper being on the trading block, right? Brandon Cooks is on the trading block. There's a slew of receivers that just ran fast. There's a few in free agency, both high end and complementary pieces. How do you handle receiver in today's NFL? There's a plethora of receivers, and I think having 4 of them is extremely valuable in today's NFL.
Also, by the way, do we need to talk about how Chris Olave got hosed by the unofficial guy, the timer? What's his name?
Mark Ross.
So this is the first year that it wasn't Charlie Casserly doing it. You know that ridiculous picture you see every combine of Charlie,
Yeah.
Well, first year he's not doing it. So Mark Ross is the guy on the unofficial clock, which they need for the TV, right? Apparently day one, Mark was a little bit quick on the trigger finger, and you had all these guys running these absurd times, including Chris Olave, who people thought would run fast, and then post an unofficial 4.26. So if you're Chris Olave and you're like, wow, 4.26, I'm done. Like, that's the proverbial Deion Sanders thing, right, where he runs his 40 and just carries on running down the tunnel, gets in a cab and bails, right? I don't need to show anything more. I'm done. Olave essentially thought that once he saw 4.26, didn't run a second 40, and then the official time comes out, and it's 4.39, right? Which is still fast, but it's not. You go from like otherworldly fast to, wow, we knew this guy was quick, but oh my God, he's the fastest receiver at the combine. To, I mean, that's nice, but like, we don't, like, that's not. If anything, it's slower than we thought you'd run.
But it doesn't matter what the unofficial time was.
It does if it stopped him running his second 40. What if he can run 4.26 and he didn't because he decided not to run the second time? That's their own fault.
Because
I mean, it's not really.
It's your own fault, because if you run 4.39, nobody that's being unprepared. That's Olave's fault.
How's that being unprepared?
Because they take your best time.
Right.
Nobody cares about your.
But if your best time, but if you thought you ran a 4.26 and you know that's quick for you, you don't want to run the second one.
Yes, but you also know that these are unofficial times. That's your own fault.
Yeah, but
that's a lack of awareness.
But the unofficial time.
That's like thinking. It's like forgetting that it's 2 feet in bounds in the NFL.
But the unofficial time shouldn't be like a tenth and a half off.
Yeah, well, it is sometimes.
Apparently.
People still believe that Taylor Mays ran like a 4.25 or whatever because he ran it. It was unofficial. They raved about it for like an hour on the combine, and it was like, oh, it was actually 4.41.
But then like day 2, it went the other way. Evidently, Mark Ross had been told to like slow it the hell down, so that if you're gonna get it wrong, err on the side of being too slow.
Maybe he was using his thumb, which is unacceptable.
Maybe. So all these running backs on day 2, it's like unofficial 4.5, and then they all ended up in the 4.3.
It's your own fault because it's unofficial. You should be prepared to know that unofficial times are unofficial, and you just run 2. It's not going to hurt you to run a second one. It could be 4.7. It doesn't matter. They would have been like, well, your best time's 4.26. That's what you are. You could have jogged it like Tariq.
I mean, it could hurt. If you run a 4.26 and then your second one is 4.4 and people thought you were a 4.4 to begin with, they're basically going to toss out the 4.26.
But the official time is going to be official no matter what it is. And teams always take the best time anyway.
But they're not going to take.
That's what goes into their system.
They're not going to take the best time if it's like an outlier.
That's what they do by default. They take the best time.
they all get together in their little scouting conclave, and they're like, what did you get? What did you get? What did you get? And you come up with like a composite number.
I mean, if they're doing it all by hand and taking those times, I mean, that's their own problem. But that's a whole different issue.
You have to do it by hand to a degree.
You have to know that the unofficial time is not official.
But so everyone keeps talking about this idea of like the concept that this is being done by stopwatches in the year 2022 is madness, right? But you can't.
Listen,
you need to start the clock at some point.
Because sometimes the automated system doesn't work.
No, but the automated system only works, it finishes it, right? When you break a laser or whatever at the end, you can stop the clock. But there needs to be something that starts the clock on the other end, which is arbitrary. Because what constitutes you starting your 40, right? Is it the second your hand twitches? Is it the first movement of the trunk of your body? Is your head bobbing up? And you know what I mean? You can't just be like, well, the laser is going to start the second you make any form of movement. Because
that would add if it was a laser start, that would add like 0.2 to everybody's 40.
Yeah,
because it would be.
But that's my point.
First movement.
So when we're saying like, oh, it's ridiculous that this is still hand timed in the year 2022. That's why. It's because you still need somebody to press the button to start the clock for the laser to then stop it at the other end. Unless you're going to put everybody in blocks, which to be honest would not be a bad idea. To give you some like actual feedback of when the guy starts moving. Maybe. Then you need somebody to start it. That's why that's why. A, there's an unofficial time, and B, why there's still a stopwatch involved in the official one.
I got you. So I mean, Olave should have run a second time.
But that was a whole there was a 12-hour like mini story on Olave. It was all of a sudden, oh my God, he just ran 4.26, and then it was like, wait, settle down. This is this thing Steve says. Don't double count it. We already thought Olave would run faster than Garrett Wilson. Don't flip them.
Turns out they were about the same.
Right.
I was wrong.
Everybody's sort of saying, you've got a group of people saying, well, Olave's now ahead of Garrett Wilson again. And the other group of people, like the backlash to that of saying, look, we already thought he'd run faster. Don't double count that and jump him in your rankings just because you've seen the proof. And then like 12 hours later, it was like, oh, well, forget all of that. They were the same time.
I want to circle back to Christian Watson really quick. At 6'4", running sub 4.4 in the PFF era back to 2006. Who do we have? Calvin Johnson, Randy Moss. Those are the big names. So those are the ones you're going to hear. I didn't put his vertical in there, though. That does parse it a little bit more. You also have Matt Jones from the Jaguars, who was 6'6", and ran 4.37. He ran the slowest 4.37 I've ever seen.
Well, the second 20 was really fast. It's just the first 20 was like...
Matt Jones, the football player. Look, before he had drug issues, Matt Jones, the former Arkansas quarterback turned receiver, became a very good possession receiver. I mean, he was just a big-bodied. He could run slants and posts and use his body. He never showed the 4.37 speed on the field. It just never played.
Well, it's because it was all build-up speed. It was like constant and pure torque that just kept on pulling, right? And the longer he ran, the faster he would go. But most receiving work is done in the first 20, not the second 20.
Here's a name you'll probably forget ran that fast in a minute, but DJ Chark is on this list. Drew Carter, Malcolm Jenkins, Ohio State Falcons. I don't remember him being that fast, running sub 4.4.
I mean, I remember him having long speed, but yeah, that's...
Terrell Pryor is on the list.
Fast.
Chaz Schillens, free agent Marquez Valdez-Scantling. There you go. Stephen Hill, the Jets second rounder, and then Tommy Streeter. So those are the players that we have in our database since 2006. 6'4", sub 4.4, obviously a mix of players there, but... yeah, that's just a huge time.
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely changed some perception.
Christian Watson, by the way, just sorry to not use just, you got to remind of the name.
With those numbers. Another guy who I think potentially altered his draft status with his workouts, Sky Moore, who's a big PFF guy, higher on PFF sports, and a lot of people, wide receiver from Western Michigan, clocked in with a 4.41. And if you sort of read scouting reports on Sky Moore pre-combine, it's a lot of talk about how, he's really smooth, he gets open, he's successful.
Quicker than fast.
Yeah, and he's not a great athlete, right? And then he shows up here, 4.4 flat, essentially, 34.5-inch vertical, 7, almost just a bit over 7 second, 3 cone, 4.32. Like, it's not. The numbers were good, better than I think people thought they would be for Sky Moore. And then he shows up with just the workouts and stuff and the route running stuff, and all that's great. So if your concern for Sky Moore was that he's not that fast, he's maybe not good enough to get it done at the next level when the athletes are better, the numbers don't back that up based off his combine.
There were going to be some good receivers selected day 2.
Yeah, I mean, Sky Moore essentially ran the same 40 time as Chris Olave, and I don't think there's this human being on the planet would have bet money on that before the combine.
All right, before we get into Jordan Davis and the Planet Theory, can I get a round of applause, everyone? Today, we once again announce Manscaped launched their Ultra Premium Collection. Believe it or not, it's for your not-so-private parts. I'm talking about a leveled-up hygiene routine with your favorite manly scent. It's an all-in-one skin and hair care kit for the everyday man. Covers your whole body, man. That's what you need. It's trusted below the waist. Now trust them with the rest. That's Manscaped. Join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the promo code PFF. Here's the recommended order. Number 1, hop in the shower, scrub a dub that body with the Manscaped body wash. Number 2, lather your hair up with the 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner to keep your noggin toggin. Number 3, dry off and spray on the hydrating body moisturizer to reinvigorate dry skin. Number 4, put on the Manscaped deodorant for obvious reasons. And then number 5, you could pop that Manscaped lip balm on. No one's out here kissing those chapped lips. So you got 5, you got the order. 5 straight things you could do with the Manscaped Ultra Premium Collection. Getting dressed after that's optional. Wear one great scent all day long, unless you're going to work. Wear clothes to work. Unless you're working from home, you can pull that off. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code PFF at manscaped.com. It's 20% off plus free shipping. Promo code's PFF at manscaped.com. The power of attraction is now in a bottle, thanks to Manscaped.
Can we get, those quote graphics we have for social media and stuff? Can I just get wear clothes to work - Steve Palazzolo set up for the PFF podcast, and we can tweet that one out?
And then cut off the part where I said unless you're working from home.
Yeah. Just wear clothes to work, Steve Palazzolo. It's the important life lessons you learn.
Can we get the social media team on this, please?
Mm-hmm. Before we leave wide receivers, we need to hit Treylon Burks a little bit. So Burks comes out and runs a 4.55 official. 33-inch vertical. Broad jump wasn't great. 3-cone wasn't great. Everything he did essentially wasn't great. Officially, and this started. So he was supposed to have he himself claimed that he has to get special giant gloves because his hands are so huge, and then his hands measure 9 7/8 inches, which is fine, but it's not I need to order extra special gloves because my hands are so huge.
Does he just have long fingers, maybe?
I think he might have the problem I have, which is the palms are bigger than the fingers, so you need to order the gloves that fit the palms, otherwise the fingers don't fit.
They're measuring from pinky to thumb.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And if you're just...
Your hands, by the way, still would break the combine record. Somebody tied it this year with 11 and 7/8.
DeForest Buckner? It was up in DeForest Buckner land?
That's where Buckner was. Somebody I think got to 11 and a half this year. You still have the foot-long hands, which is freakish.
It's part of the combine breakdown if we win.
But my point being, if you're getting gloves, you need gloves. In order to jam your palm into the gloves, they need to fit a certain size, right? And if your fingers are smaller than that, you're just going to have this air of empty space up here. It's a problem I've dealt with a lot, Steve. And if Burks has that issue on a larger scale, he's going to need bigger gloves than his fingers fit.
Well, it's kind of like me. I have a tall body, so I need to find XL tall. I can't use double, triple XL stuff because I'm not that wide.
Yeah.
But it's got to have the length. I get it.
Yeah.
So Treylon Burks officially 15th percentile hands.
Yeah.
But if he's looking for those custom gloves, maybe it's not a big deal.
Anyway, the point is, his hands are smaller than he claimed they were. He was 6'2", 225. And then every workout number was good, not great. Not even good, not great. It was okay.
Not bad at that size.
No, and that's the thing, right? Is when you factor in the fact that he's 225 pounds, he ends up with workout numbers that are basically the same as A.J. Brown, who was a guy a lot of people were comparing him to anyway. It's just given expectations. This is one of those things that's where the combine gets tricky, is when you literally just put it into a database. And it's look, he's A.J. Brown physically, right? It makes sense. It's fine. But the expectations for Burks were, when you throw on his tape, like if that guy finds a crease, he's gone. There's so many plays where he's just flying past everybody, and you were kind of expecting he's going to run fast. Like maybe he won't get into the 4.3s, but we were sort of setting over-unders on the table at Radio Row, and it was like 4.45. So you're taking a tenth off that was his over-under, and a lot of people were taking the under.
This is where I do wonder, because the game speed for Treylon Burks at Arkansas did look faster. Yeah. And I wonder if you did have that data. This is one of those examples that would trump the combine.
I wonder two things. Yes, one, when you weigh 225 pounds, does putting shoulder pads and a helmet on you make less of an impact than it does when you put that on Calvin Austin? Because those are essentially within an order of magnitude, those pads and helmet weigh the same, right? For either one of those guys. Obviously, Burks is going to have bigger pads, so it's not quite. But you know what I mean? Like you're adding a few pounds, whatever, of weight and awkwardness to each of those guys. But the percentage that's adding on to their body weight when you're Treylon Burks versus Calvin Austin is significantly different. So does he just carry the equipment and stuff better? And when you get to the game, he's actually way faster than he is in shorts and a T-shirt. The other thing is, so
that's fair.
He was noticeably, what's the best word to use? Chunkier than every other wide receiver that was running drills and routes and stuff. Now, look, it's not like you and me chunky, you know? He's not obviously carrying some extra fat poundage around the midriff, but he was definitely like, he's not as lean as these other guys. Like he's thick, he's heavier, and it's obvious when you're watching him. So you know, when Austin Gale was on our podcast, he was telling us that when they interviewed Treylon Burks, he had these stories about how they used to kind of, you know, his teammates used to mock him a little bit and call him whatever it was, pudgy or you know, he was carrying extra weight at a time, worked on it getting down. Now, did that creep back in? You know, is he carrying more weight than he should be potentially? Are we looking at a guy who actually, he may have weighed in at 225, but maybe he should be weighing in at 215 and all of a sudden looking way faster?
That's a problem because you're training to weigh in where you want to.
It's a problem if it's real, right? But I don't know if that's real. Like, am I extrapolating a couple of data points that aren't necessarily connected and joining the dots and coming up with something that's wrong?
We'll have more on Treylon Burks, but I don't know if that's going to affect his first-round status with everybody else blazing. And
right.
Again, the plethora of receivers around the league.
My only point with all that is all these guys helping themselves, you know, with their workout numbers and their times. He was a guy that didn't, and if anything, went the other way.
What do you think that time is from?
7.
It's like 4 minutes off in mountain time.
Yeah, who knows?
It's not helpful.
It's not a time, is it? It's just a timer.
Is it?
I have no idea.
Anyway, let's talk Jordan Davis.
Okay.
Bill Parcells, planet theory. There's only so many people on the planet, or there's no people on the planet. I think Jordan Davis resembles that.
From seeing these people in person and at the podiums and all those kinds of things, we need a way of some sort of one-on-one, just sumo battle between Jordan Davis and Daniel Faalele. I need to see the two of them like battle it out, you know, in just a one-on-one like wrestling match.
Yeah.
Because those are two huge human beings.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's go. So Davis is listed as 6'6", 340.
Yeah.
This is one of those times where it pretty much nailed it. 6'6", 341 at the combine.
Which was down. He was saying that's down on his playing weight. Like he was up in the 350s.
Really?
Slimmed down to 341 for the combine weigh-in. Said he wants to play, I think, at 335 or something like that. Like that's what he's working towards.
Same.
Yeah. But yeah, an absolutely monstrous.
34-inch arms. That's 80th percentile. Hand size, 96th percentile. The 40-yard dash, 4.78. Now that's 94th percentile for all interior defensive linemen, including guys that probably weighed in at 280 in our database, right?
I mean, Aaron Donald, right? Aaron Donald weighed in like, what, 286 or something? Around a 4.6. It's only 0.2 different. Like, that's 60 pounds he's carrying on top of Aaron Donald's weight.
A 32-inch vertical, which, by the way, that's my record. 32-inch vertical, 77th percentile.
What were you weighing in at when you did that?
277.
Okay.
I had a 32-inch vertical at probably 275, I would say. Broad jump, this is the one, 10 feet, 3 inches. That's 98th percentile. And the broad jump and then the 40 are records for 300-pounders or 340-pounders, certainly.
No, 300.
For 300
Anybody over
pounders.
300 pounds, that's a record.
So figuring out what do you do with this? Because when guys work out like this is the most recent data point. And all these data points matter. Jordan Davis, the debate a week ago is whether or not he's worth it in the first round as a run-stopping defensive tackle. He's a very good run stopper. He's tough to move at 340 pounds, and obviously he moves well and can finish plays and do all that stuff. Never rushed the passer effectively at Georgia, and now I feel like the debate's going to be, is he worth a top 10 pick? Like, is some team going to look at this and say he's going in the top 10? Give me that guy. I'll figure it out as a pass rusher. This is one of the, there's probably 3 or 4 guys that put together maybe the most impressive combine of all time, which is insane. But it's true.
It really is.
What do you make of Jordan Davis coming out of this thing?
So,
and I'll give you some player comps as far as what the workout looks like.
So number one, when he was on the podium before the workouts and stuff, everybody was standing at a lot of these podiums, right? And the standard of questions that is being asked of these people is pitiful, generally, right? There's some people asking some smart things, or some people asking some
You're
things.
just so on brand here.
They're just so bad. Look, if I'm hauling my ass out of bed to get to this 8 a.m. podium, and you roll in there and you're like, so, okay, a lot of them are like, have you met with Team X? And I understand these are beat writers. They kind of have to ask that kind of crap, right? It feels like we could short circuit that by saying, look, send these guys out and tell them the first thing they have to tell everybody is the teams they've met with, and just shortcut that whole thing, right? But then you have people like asking, just, what do you make of, Team X? You're like, what? Wait, what are we doing here? We have like 10 questions to ask this guy, and you are pissing one away on that banality. Stop it.
Anyone ask their New Year's resolutions?
No, thankfully. So one of the things that got asked to a lot of people was, who are the players in the NFL that you model your game after? And every defensive lineman is like, well, Aaron Donald and J.J. Watt, because,
Right, that's who you model.
Right.
Yeah.
So Jordan Davis was like, well, Aaron Donald and J.J. Watt are obviously two of the monsters, but me, you might not even remember this guy, but I've been studying John Henderson. Like, yes, good work, sir. Now, John Henderson is the guy that Renner's comped him to in the draft guide,
well done,
which is
Renner.
amazing. But B, how he even knows that John Henderson exists. This guy is, 21?
win.
How old is he?
Huge win for Jordan Davis.
And he knows,
Now,
John Henderson exists. B, that he actually isn't a bad comp for John Henderson. That's a pretty good guy to be studying.
It is a good comp. It's a bit of a slap in the face, though.
Stop it.
Former Georgia Bulldog, Marcus Stroud. Is that where I was going?
No, I thought that wasn't a pun.
No, it was.
Because the most famous thing for
that.
John Henderson is
I know the slap
guy
in the face.
slapping him in the face.
I caught that
He
after.
did that by accident.
It was a slap in the face, a John Henderson slap in the face to Marcus Stroud,
Okay.
former Georgia Bulldog. But Stroud was a little bit more up the field penetrator, whereas John Henderson.
No, Henderson's a better comp.
Henderson is absolutely a great comp. Henderson went like 8th or something. He was in the top 10.
Yeah.
But it was a different time.
Right. And I can't remember what Henderson weighed, but it wasn't.
It was like high 330s, I think it was.
I don't think he's the same size as Jordan Davis, though.
We might have him in our database here.
One of my favorite things is, that guy on Twitter,
There we go.
Math Bomb,
6'7", 335.
Kent Lee Platt, or whatever his name is. So he does this composite athleticism and size score, RAS. I assume people shorten it to, which I'm going to, whether or not you're supposed to. And one of the things you can do on that is to swap by positions, right? So obviously Jordan Davis has like the highest RAS ever recorded for a defensive tackle because it factors size into this stuff. But you can also see what it would be like if you made him a different position. So if you made Jordan Davis a defensive end, not a defensive tackle, he still has one of the greatest RAS scores of all time, even factoring in the fact that now you're talking about guys that weigh 220 and can run a 4.4, right? He still has one of the best RAS scores ever based on that size. Even if you make him a linebacker, like an off-the-ball linebacker, it isn't the worst score in the world.
But it's still like adjusting for the fact that he's 340.
Yes. Now the kind of the measurement times, the speed times start to get bad when you make him a linebacker. But the point is, right, you're talking about a dude that's 6'6", 340, had one of the greatest workouts you're ever going to see of any position ever. And the thing that it does is it at least eliminates the question of can he physically rush the passer, right? There are players where you look at them and you say, that guy as great a run defender as he is, he really physically doesn't have the tools to be a good pass rusher at the next level. That's not an option for Jordan Davis.
So you said he's working on it.
Yes.
Right?
He
now,
himself.
not to overrate the fact that players are like, hey, I've got this weakness. I'm working on it. I'll be better at it. Players have been saying that for years. Explain where he is, and I'm going to come back with what I think could change these evaluations going forward.
So he himself said that he basically admitted that, look, I'm being pigeonholed as this run defender, and it's not the most inaccurate thing in the world, but I'm working on it. He's working with a guy called Chuck Smith,
right,
whose nickname is Dr. Rush. Now, just judging by Chuck's Twitter profile here, there's a degree of self-promotion involved in Chuck that I think he's pretty good at.
That's what these guys have to do.
Well, his bio is football's foremost expert in the art of pass rush. Nickname Dr. Rush, and just from this Twitter bio, I'm going to go ahead and say he created that nickname as opposed to one that was given to him. His cover picture is, "You want sacks? ? I got you covered. # Dr. Rush."
See, if he was really sound, he should say, do you want PFF pass rush grade, since it's more stable and more effective for your future team?
It's less catchy, though.
It is.
Anyway, he's working with Dr. Rush, who is a guy who's, like those QB guru types.
Sure.
He's the guy for pass rush. There you go. Look. And that's a good thing, right? He's trying to balance that out and trying to become as good a pass rusher as he is a run defender. And again, those workout numbers say there's no reason that can't happen.
Right, and this is why a team's going to look at this and say, give me the raw clay, even though he didn't do it at Georgia. But between Dr. Rush in the offseason, what we're going to teach him, we'll get him to rush the passer, we'll make him effective on 600 snaps instead of 400 snaps. You could talk yourself into Jordan Davis in the top 10.
Yeah, so he has 30 total pressures in 4 seasons. But those 4 seasons amount to a total of 1,127 snaps and 603 pass rushes. So that would be, that's basically the same number of snaps as Aaron Donald played this year when you factor in the playoffs, right? You're talking about a full season and a bit of of play.
So I just want to explain. I think the NFL historically, they always start with a baseline of something, right? And a lot of teams start with a baseline of height, weight, speed, right? Do you fit this criteria of whatever we're looking for at a position? And if you do, okay, we'll dig in further into you as a player. I think a lot of what we've done at PFF has started with a baseline of production. And does production historically translate? And on the interior of the defensive line, it translates really well.
Yeah.
And if you don't fit that baseline, okay, how are we going to, how does that move you up and down, right? Do we want to incur that risk of a guy who's not terribly productive and take him in the first round? I think the thing that could be changing the game, and I think we have to look into this further, our personal coaches better than ever, right? So Duke Manyweather does a really good job with OL Masterminds and taking a guy like Mekhi Becton, who had all the physical tools. He's another Planet Theory guy, right? Running whatever he ran at 360 pounds, right? Incredible combine, who had work to do coming out of college and has improved. Health has been an issue. He's had some injuries, but when on the field, Mekhi Becton has improved upon some of the production concerns I think we had coming out of college. If can you take those chances more now? And this happened in baseball. This happened in other sports. In baseball, guys are throwing harder than ever because they found really good sports science, right? There's sports science has taken these massive leaps in other sports. Whereas in football, I think there's a little bit of that. That's why we see faster times. But it's also technique work, and you put it all together, and maybe you can project more for players than you could in the past. And what I'm saying is, maybe we could do we put a little less stock in Jordan Davis's lack of production from a pass rush standpoint, because that's a gap that can be bridged better than ever.
Yeah, I think the overall point would be is taking a raw prospect with freakish athletic tools and physical gifts. Are you better doing that now than you were in the past? Not because you have a greater capacity to develop him, but because personal coaches have a bigger role now than they ever have before, and just simply the time dedicated. If that guy wants to work at it, there's a massive amount that he can improve individually before he gets anywhere near your building or completely independent of your building. So the time that you lose now in today's world of collective bargaining agreement and limited practice time and all that kind of stuff, the developmental time that you lose there, you can gain back and then some on an individual basis with a personal coach. I think there's definitely something to that. And in particular, outside of quarterback, because I think quarterback is one of those positions where you really do need live reps, right? And you can change some things and you can improve technique and blah, blah, blah. But until the bullets start flying, you don't really know if that's going to work. Whereas defensive line, cornerback, receiver, I think you can do a lot more outside of a team structure on an individual coaching basis than you can with quarterbacks. So I like that argument. I think there's something to that. My question would be for Jordan Davis specifically, right? Everybody's going to focus on the pass rush and the relative lack of it. 30 pressures in 4 years, really didn't ever make an impact there. And, the obvious counter to that is, well, Georgia, look at the Georgia workouts, right? They had a ton of these guys. They were rotating in. There wasn't an awful lot. Everybody was being spared, so they had the best pass rushers on the field. The best pass rusher wasn't Jordan Davis. So he didn't play that much. Now, number one, there's 600 pass rushes there, and he had 30 pressures. So that's quite a lot of pass rushes without a lot of pressure. Number two, my bigger question is, why was he not amazing in the run game? This is the one thing.
He was very good.
Yeah,
but unstoppable.
Look, what we've just seen is a man mountain of a human being, right? A 6'6" dude that played at 350, who it turns out is the most athletic defensive tackle that's ever walked the earth. Why did that guy not have a run grade of 95 every single year, and you simply couldn't run the ball anywhere near him when he was on the field? He was good, but not great against the run every single year of his career. My bigger question is, why did that guy not absolutely freaking dominate against the run? And then we can talk about the pass rush later on down the line. Is he simply not as good a player as he was an athlete?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, the PFF grades are, like you said, good, not great. I'm trying to see where they rank historically. As that's going, here are some comps historically. Guys, I just looked at guys that ran sub 5, okay? So I cut the sample here I added more people to the sample. 340-pounders who ran under a 5 flat 40.
There's like 3 of them.
No, there's a few. Michael Pierce did that.
Michael Pierce ran under 5 seconds?
Great run defender from the Ravens and now Vikings legend. Vita Vea from the Bucs. Dexter Lawrence from the Giants. I think Vita Vea, Dexter Lawrence are the two modern examples that you're looking at. These first-round nose tackles. Both of those guys play a ton of snaps, rush the passer effectively, especially Vea, and play good run defense. Alan Branch did it. He's had a nice career. Dontari Poe, who we mentioned on the daily. Dontari Poe was 340 plus, broke sub 5, and it was like, wow, this dude is breaking the combine. The difference with Poe, he wasn't great at the explosive measures. He wasn't great. He didn't have great arm length. He didn't have all the other. Jordan Davis is great at all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Paul Soliai had a really nice career as a run stopper for a while. T.J. Slayton, late round pick for the Packers last year, who played a little bit as a rookie. Dalen Mack did it, and then Casey Walker, so a couple other names. There's not a huge list of names. If you parse down the 40 time, nobody's in that 4.78 range like Jordan Davis. So Planet Theory does apply.
So I want to ask you being one of these people that tends to err on the side of stick with what you already knew, don't overreact to combine numbers. You were a guy before this who was saying, and I was along with you, saying Jordan Davis might not be drafted in the first round. What did this do to that take? Because he's going to go higher, but that's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, what did it do to your opinion of where he should be drafted?
So I honestly think it depends on the team. So one of the debates online were about the Chargers a lot. I think a team like the Chargers that very specifically plays lighter boxes and relies on defensive tackles to play the run better, I'm okay with that. I'd be okay with the Chargers at 17. I don't think Jordan Davis is for everybody because I also think Travis Jones coming out of UConn had you can get these guys. You can get an elite run stopper later. Just for perspective, here's where Jordan Davis ranks from a production standpoint against NFL prospects. The pass rush grade we talked about, 6th percentile. So this is out of a sample of 139 players that we have college data on who have gone on to the NFL. And he's 130th out of 139 in pass rush grade. He's 81st percentile in run defense grade, so it's still very good.
Right.
And run stop percentage is 91st percentile. That number translates really highly to the NFL level. Okay, so listen. I'm more likely to talk myself into Jordan Davis in the first round because of what I said about working on the pass rush game? Or do I just trust my defensive line coach to say, look, like Vince Wilfork, like Vita Vea, you're just going to lean into some guards and push the pocket. You're just going to destroy that escape route and let my edges win. And if you have a Joey Bosa coming off the edge, I could see that. So I would take Jordan Davis mid to late first round.
But that number, I think, is important. The idea that his run defense grade is, what did you say, 81st?
81st percentile.
So 81st percentile. And that is literally the number that you are basing his
you would hope it's 90th plus. You would hope it was higher.
Right.
Yeah.
So like if you're telling me I'm going to draft this guy in the first round based off his run defense grade and the fact that he's an athletic freak, and we hope maybe down the line we can get some pass rush out of him. But like essentially we're drafting this guy because of the special impact he can make in the run game, which has these ancillary benefits that are difficult to tease out right now, but we think are worth more than the sort of conventional wisdom dictates, right? If you're selling me on that, you better be telling me that this guy is like otherworldly against the run, and he isn't. Like, he's good. 81st percentile is very good, but it's not like this changes everything we know about everything else. Like, it's so good that we're going to toss everything else out the window because if he's that dominant in this area, it will offset a whole bunch of other stuff. Like, that's my concern with Davis is if he's this freakish of an athlete, if he's that big, that strong, that explosive, that powerful, why was he not better against the run?
No, it's a fair question. I'm more likely to take him in the first. I'm sorry. What did I say for UConn player?
Travis Jones.
Oh, okay. I thought I screwed up his name for a second because he had a great workout too, and better.
There were a bunch of people that actually posted really great workouts, even at that position, who like nobody is going to talk about because Davis set another worldly workout record.
So yeah, bottom line, I'm more likely to take Jordan Davis in the first round, and it definitely depends on the team and style and how you play. Though I'm really intrigued by taking someone else in the first round and maybe looking at Travis Jones in the second round. All right, who else do we have as far as workouts we want to talk about? Do you want to talk Hutch?
Sure.
Aidan Hutchinson. Disappointing arm length. 6'7", 32.5 arms.
It's more confusing. Like, how do you have arms that short at 6'7"?
How was he not prepared? Why did he not study for the combine and get his arm length to where it needed to be?
Yeah. You think you could massage that out?
You would think.
You were saying on the daily that we talked about that maybe there's Joe Thomas had that famous thing we talked about it on the podcast where for years Joe Thomas was like the poster boy of, hey, you can be an elite left tackle with really short arms because his measurement was like 32. And he was saying that like it was like a mismeasurement. Like they screwed it up, right? And then he went and had it done again. It was like 34 or something. So
makes for a better story,
like
though.
Maybe Hutchinson, maybe he was tensing a trap or something and just tightened it all up and we got 32. Maybe he goes at the pro day.
I'm going to give you
learns the proper technique of relaxing everything, and all of a sudden we're talking about a guy with 35-inch arms.
I'll give you a historic look of edges because there are some former scouts out there saying we did studies. So I've heard from a lot of people. So the people that talk about like, oh, the NFL's old, analytics and all that stuff. There's a lot of old school scouts and people that were in the NFL in the 90s and early 2000s. I mean, they studied a lot of stuff. I mean, it's like, why wouldn't you? They studied the arm length and they studied a lot of this stuff. Now, I don't know how good the studies were back then, but Greg Gabriel came out. He used to be the GM of the Bears. I've talked to other people behind the scenes who are like, oh, we studied this. But that was like 10 years ago at best, and things have changed. My problem with the studies are what are you using as success? Are you using starts as success? There's noise there. So I think people have done studies forever, but how efficient they are, the studies, have gotten better now that there's math people doing them. My point, Greg Gabriel came out and said, hey, we studied it with the Bears. Arm length is a bigger indicator than blah, blah, blah. Everything else for edge defenders. So I looked up edge defenders with sub 32.5 arms in the PFF era. Here are some names. Shaquille Barrett has the highest PFF grade among those with sub 32.5-inch arms.
Very good player.
Melvin Ingram.
Very good player.
Clay Matthews.
Very good player.
Brooks Reed.
Decent player.
Trey Hendrickson. Carl Lawson.
Very good player.
A couple guys that just made bank in free agency. How about Michael Johnson?
Really?
Michael Johnson. I got to look up his comp. So when you look at Hutchinson.
That's another guy that like
he's
9
6'7". I'm going to look up his numbers in a minute. Hutchinson's 98th percentile height, 6'7", 13th percentile arm length, 32. Sorry, he's 32 and eighth.
At least 6 inches of Michael Johnson's height were in his neck, so that probably changes the whole distribution a bit.
The Glennon Davis Mills track.
Yeah.
So there are some decent names: Yannick Ngakoue, Marcus Golden, Adrian Claiborne. They're getting worse because I started with the highest grades. Then you have guys at the bottom like Kaylavon Chason, Larry English, failed first rounder. Kamalea Correa went in the second round. Bud Dupree. Bud's in this list here. Vic Beasley. Now, the difference with those guys is they don't have a lot, like Vic Beasley, undersized, didn't really have the weight, and he was just a speed guy. I mean, there's reasons why some of these guys didn't do well. So my point is it's not a death sentence for Aidan Hutchinson to have short arms. But then you offset this by the fact that he ran fast, vertical was high, 80th percentile, the 20-yard shuttle was 95th percentile, 4.15. Three-cone, 6.73.
That's very good.
99th percentile.
And another guy where when you watch the drills, like when you watch the bag work and the movement skills, I mean, he looked good.
So then if you just look for, here are the edges, let's use the agility drills. Sub 6'8" cone, sub 4'2" shuttle. So these are, Hutch's, do I have to call him Hutch now? Are we obligated by company? Aidan Hutchinson is very much in these buckets here. Sub 4.8 40. So players with similar workout numbers on the edge. Von Miller, TJ Watt, Bruce Irvin, Jason Trusnick also in there. But it's a short list highlighted by, Von Miller and TJ Watt, 2 all-pro type players. So again, depends on how you parse out these workout numbers, what you think of them. Does it make sense that Hutchinson has short arms at 6'7"? No, not really. But I think the other workout numbers, turning the edge and all that stuff, I think kind of get him.
So a couple other people
where he needs to be.
A couple other people I think to talk about in terms of helping their draft stock, or changing the narrative a little bit overall. Breece Hall. So.
Really going to talk running backs here, huh?
Yeah. For the first time in like 3 years. Breece Hall, running back out of Iowa State, 5'11", 217 pounds, like your sort of prototypical running back, size, strength, all those kinds of things. Was a broken tackle machine at Iowa State, racked up an absolute ton of those things. And the one criticism about him was, but is he a great athlete? Is he just a good, not great type of player in terms of those things, breakaway speed, all that kind of thing. Runs out here, 40-inch vertical jump, huge. Broad jump, 126 inches, also huge. Ends up with a 4.39 official 40 time. And this was, remember, day 2 was the running back day where old Mark was slow on the trigger finger unless he make the Olave mistake again. So I think that started off as like a 4.5, and then officially
then he came down officially
4.39. So all of a sudden, now you're looking at him and you're saying, well, what's the negative? So, and Mike Renner was making this point all the way through the week. Like, why are these running backs, him and Kenneth Walker from Michigan State, right? Why are these running backs this year not being talked about the same way last year's class were? Because all of a sudden, every box is being ticked, right? They are as athletic as that group a year ago. He's as productive. He's like, why are we not talking about these guys as first rounders? Now, okay, look, the PFF thing complicates it. We'd never draft a running back in the first round. But why is the general consensus that these 2 running backs at the top of this group are not in the same echelon as a Najee Harris, say, from last year?
I mean, I think it's Bama and Clemson, Najee Harris and Travis Etienne.
Versus Iowa State. Surely, like, the world, though, like the draft
I think
community.
That was a factor, at least a factor in that. Etienne had been so productive for a while. He was probably, if he went in the first round last year, he was going to be a fringe first rounder as a junior. Comes back an extra year, goes in the first.
But Walker is the Big Ten. Like,
no, I know. And Walker was outstanding
versus Clemson. Surely that's,
Well, maybe they will be now, because if people didn't expect Breece Hall to be that type of player, but he does 86th percentile in missed tackles forced per attempt.
Right. Walker ends up with a 4.38, by the way. So He wasn't as good as the vertical.
Well, maybe NFL teams will be intrigued and they'll go in the first round now too.
Yeah, so Breece Hall in particular, I think that changed the narrative, right? Because all of a sudden you're looking at a guy and you're saying, well, now he has the athleticism as well, and we didn't necessarily think that was true. So where's the negative? Like what's the minus in what's the con column here? Because there's nothing left.
Breece Hall's workout looks like what I expected Dalvin Cook to put up. 90th plus percentile vertical, broad, and 40. Now, Dalvin still plays fast on the field. He just didn't do it at the combine.
What do you make of Dalvin's brother?
A little slighter, right?
But isn't he just like Dalvin, but like on 90%? You know, when you make a print of something, you adjust the size.
Yeah.
He literally the same type of player, including the same speed. He's just Dalvin, but like photocopied at 90%.
But not as good as Dalvin, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hope he is. He's on my dynasty team, so we hope for James Cook to
that's the big thing.
to excel. How about Tariq Woolen?
Sure.
UTSA, another break the combine type of workout,
which was expected, right?
Which was expected. Interesting story. Our guy Doug Kide has a story about how he became a corner. Because I mean, when I see a guy that's 6'4", runs a 4.26. 42-inch vertical and odd stuff, I'm like, man, that's kind of a waste at corner. Put him at receiver. But he was a receiver at UTSA. And in 2019, late in the year, he moves to cornerback. Had to train during the offseason at corner. He's still very young at the position. And so this is where, when you look at the data, it's not good. He did not have a good grade last year. He's never graded well. But when you add the context of he's only played corner for 2 years, and 2 years ago, he was playing Madden, learning how to play cover 4, which, by the way, Madden, I don't know if they've adjusted since. I love Madden, but I don't know. I don't know if they have the right quarters rules in Madden. I think they have worked hard to make it work, but you're learning coverages from Madden. You're training at the position in the offseason. So where does Tariq Woolen go? Because the production's not great on the field. 6'4". That's 99th percentile for corners. 33 and 5/8 inch arms. This must sound like gibberish when you're listening on the podcast, but I'm trying to add the percentile rank to get context. That's 98th percentile. That's like press man teams. This is built in a lab type cornerback stuff. Then you run a 4.26 and vertically jump 42 inches. These are all 98th percentile or higher. The 40-yard dash, 4.26, that's 100th percentile historically. You just don't see this type of player. What do you do with Tariq Woolen? Because I think you almost have to expect. So if you draft him in the first round, you have 5 years potentially of him. And I think you throw 2 of those years out and say, okay, what if we get nothing from him for 2 years? And then by year 3, he peaks. And if you draft him in the first round, you get 3 years of production out of Woolen, hypothetically. But there's a lot of growth he needs to make to become a good NFL player. But man, only 2 years at corner. The growth potential's there. Held his own at the Senior Bowl. I don't know if he goes in the first round, but he's at least in that second round conversation now with this crazy workout.
Yeah, I mean, he put out workout numbers that are basically as good as you're going to see at everything he did across the board. And he's got that freakish size and, length and those kinds of things. You talk about the 40-yard dash, 4.26, obviously lightning fast. His 10-yard split was under 1.5 seconds.
That's insane.
1.48. That's madness. Like that. Not only is he insanely fast over a 40, but he's like lightning quick immediately.
He's
right out of the gate.
Very quick. Breaking on the ball. I mean, I want to talk Kyle Hamilton in a minute because Hamilton looked really slow.
So to me, this is like the equivalent of the Jordan Mailata deal. Only you're not going to have the option to get him in the 7th round, right? It's like, what if I gave you the perfect offensive tackle mold? Like, what if I gave you this guy? We create a player in Madden, right? We max everything up to 99. Yeah. This is the perfect player, but he's never played.
Mailata is the exact thing I was thinking of.
Right.
No, the risk with Mailata is round 7.
He went in the 7th.
You take that
because
all day.
He literally never played, right? Had never played the game, right. And you gave the Eagles this opportunity, and this guy still got drafted in the 7th round. Tariq Woolen isn't quite the same thing because he's played. He just hasn't played well yet. But the same thing is true, right? It's like it's a Madden creative player where everything has been maxed up to 99, and we've got a little bit of play time, and it's not been good. What do you do with that? Now, the fact that Mailata worked out, I think, is probably good for those types of players. And I think, as you said, that's becoming a bigger and bigger thing where you just take the freak and figure out if you can teach him to play later on.
I'm always of the mind that the team, this is, I think, also one of the reasons why you want to draft in bulk, right? The Eagles with their 3 first-rounders and all the teams that have multiple first-rounders and a ton of just first and second-round picks or day 1 and 2 picks, I think you're more likely to take these chances, or you should be. I think where it becomes risky is the team that has like 5 picks and one of them is on a project. I'm fine. Give me all of the projects. Give me all of the players that have something special, whether it's from a workout standpoint, whether it's from a production standpoint. Give me all those guys, right? You can handle guys that have question marks if you have more draft picks.
And by the way, so for a guy like Woolen, I wouldn't rule out the idea that down the line you move him back to receiver if it doesn't work out at corner. Like, with those tools, with that athleticism, there's a role for him somewhere.
I want to talk about why speed might not be as important at corner than it is for receiver. But quick break to tell you about our friends over at All-22. We've been talking about them for a while. They're unveiling the newest fantasy football game that hundreds of PFF employees have been playing. We did this last year. It uses PFF grades. So All-22 is using weekly PFF grades as one of its main scoring components to test your ability to build a full 53-man roster, including offensive line. This is like the dream for fantasy football here. If you've ever dreamt of sitting in an NFL front office, if you enjoy the scouting process, this is it. You're going to love All-22. So you can join the wait list. It's on all-22.com. Just put your email in there, all-22.com. If you join the wait list before the NFL draft, that's coming up soon, you'll receive a special promo code for your All-22 subscription. Waitlist users will even gain access to premium content like inaugural draft guides, in-season strategies, feature release announcements, and more. Be sure to follow at All-22_PFF on Twitter. That's All-22_PFF on Twitter. These guys are doing a great job. Built this thing from scratch with a vision that we had over 10 years ago. They're putting it into action using the PFF grades and all 22 positions, including positional value, every single week. All 22, less fantasy, more football. So a 4.2640, like we see the impact of Tyreek Hill. We see the impact of Henry Ruggs when he was out there. Even John Ross once a year.
Even John Ross.
The 4.22 speed comes into play. That is just a far more important number for receivers, I think, than corners. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, so blazing top end speed at receiver is always useful. Blazing top end speed at corner is not always useful. I think that's the difference. Like we talked before about how cornerback, the important speed thing is to be under a certain number, to be faster than 4.6 essentially. How much faster than 4.6 is bonus territory. But the important part is you just can't be a level of slow. Whereas receiver, every increment you are faster than that number is only more useful, right? It makes you more difficult to cover and makes you more dangerous when you are open. So that's the difference in the relationship.
He didn't run a 3-cone, no change of direction drills. Would he be in that Trey Waynes short shuttle higher than his 40? Potentially.
Who knows? Possibly.
I mean, he's very quick. He does a lot of good things. What about Kyle Hamilton? Top safety on the board, consensus. A lot of people disappointed in his 40, coming in at 4.59. 10-yard split just looked the number of the 10-yard split did look bad, but it just the start just looked off and a little clunky. Like to me, Hamilton may have run slow just because his technique wasn't great. 7 steps in your first 10, not great. You want to do it in 5. That's the goal.
I see.
When I trained for the combine, that's how we did it.
His other numbers are very good, though.
Yeah, he's got explosion. Some people are pulling out the Justin Simmons comp. Simmons ran a 4.61. Simmons, Broncos safety, was one of the league's best.
Sub 7-second 3-cone. Broad jump was massive. Vertical
at 220 pounds.
That's the key, right? Broad jump was massive. Vertical leap of 38 inches. And 6'4", 220. Like this is... Again, when you look at what we were saying for Treylon Burks, right, 225, running a 4.55 at 225 is actually not bad. Running 4.59 at 220 is not bad. It's just that the expectations are better. And the difference between the two of them is that Kyle Hamilton was outstanding at the explosive stuff and change of direction stuff.
In arm length, 95th percentile arm length, that shows up. That's one of those things that shows up on the field. That's why he breaks up so many passes.
All of his other numbers were spectacular, and maybe you can talk yourself into the idea, and maybe, Notre Dame's Pro Day or whatever, he runs faster and shaves a tenth off that, and now we have a perfect workout. But it's definitely, the 40 time wasn't great, but everything else was.
Hamilton does have some ugly plays on tape too. Like, he's not perfect. Like, he's got some ugly plays on tape or doesn't find the ball or whatever. But when we talk about he shows up out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think every
plays,
safety is going to have that.
Of course, I know. I'm just saying, I have to put that as a caveat.
Also, by the way, if you watch his 40 time, the dude is weaving all over the lane.
Yeah,
That's not helping.
It's a technique thing, right? Whereas you watch Woolen, it's like, dude, looks like a track star.
Like, he literally makes his way outside of the lane at one point and has to come back in.
One of the other corners, circling back to corner here, that he might be cornerback 1 off the board now, Sauce Gardner.
Yeah. So he was the guy we highlighted going into the combine. And we were saying, hey, somebody that could change the talk is Sauce Gardner. He's a guy who hasn't given up a touchdown his entire college career, has freakish size and length and all those kinds of things. But the question about him is, doesn't look that fast on tape. And if he comes out here and runs like a 4.4 flat, you're talking about a different player. So what does he do? Comes out here and basically runs a 4.4 flat, right? 4.41. So now all of a sudden you're talking about a dude who does tick all the boxes. The tape speaks for itself. It's fantastic. The 4.41 is different than people thought he was going to be. Still 6'3", 190 pounds, long arms. I mean,
98th percentile arm length, 33.5. And the 40-yard dash is 77th percentile at 4.41. So that's more than good enough. When you have that type of height, length, and speed, with Derek Stingley not working out yet, the production issues about Stingley's last 2 years, the injury concerns with Stingley, there's already rumors that Stingley's going to fall into the teens or the 20s. And I think Gardner, with this workout, momentum's in his favor to be the top corner off the board potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think he was right there anyway in terms of being just with Stingley. But this changes the dynamic. If you were looking at his tape and you were like, I mean, I love his game, but I don't know how fast he is. I'm a little concerned there. And all of a sudden, boom, 4.4 flat. That's fast enough, more than fast enough. Like, that is quick. It's not otherworldly 4.2, whatever, combine breaking quick, but it goes from this was in the guy's negatives column, right? If you were looking at pre-draft scouting reports on Sauce Gardner, you were going to see stuff that was like, questionable deep speed or questionable long speed or whatever it was, right? And that's not a thing anymore. That's not there.
One more player I want to highlight who had a great combine is Travon Walker, another Georgia guy, right? All the Georgia guys, Devontae Wyatt, Walker had an incredible one. I looked for comps for his numbers, and there's not many. So from an athleticism standpoint, Walker has the same issue. Now, Georgia rushed the passer a little weird, right? Their edge rushers, they didn't give the edge rushers this wide alignment a whole lot to really get up the field and attack tackles. They were a little bit tighter. It was, I want to say it was a lot of like team-based pass rushing, right? Setting up your teammates and a lot of stunts and all that stuff. But Travon Walker's pass rush production is not there. Excellent run defender. When I was watching his film, I was like, there's some JPP type of athleticism and movement skills and stuff here. Did you pull up his numbers, Walker? Okay, no. I'm going to pull up his numbers here in a minute. I want to read them off, and I only found one player that's similar to him. So Walker on the edge, over 270, right? He's moving incredibly well. He weighs it at 272. Arm length is 35.5. That's 97th percentile. 40-yard dash, 4.51, 97th percentile. There's nobody in that ballpark, by the way. 4.51 at that weight in this size. Vertical was 75th percentile. Broad was 84th percentile. 3-cone, 93rd percentile. So that's Walker from Georgia. The only players that we could find in the database that had, they were over 260, under 4.6 40, and under 4.4 shuttle, even though he crushed that. Montez Sweat, who went in the first round for Washington football team a couple years ago. If you move the parameters around a little bit, you get a few more players. And plus the arm length, by the way, over 35. That's where Montez Sweat comes in. If you take out the arm length, you get a few more players. Pretty unique, though, when it comes to Travon Walker, what he brings to the table. I think solidified himself in the first round. The question, though, his pass rush production, too. It's a similar question as Jordan Davis. Why has this player not dominated yet, despite tools that are JPP-ish or Montez Sweat-ish?
Yeah, so it is exactly the same question, where you're looking at a guy whose measurables, whose athleticism, all those kinds of things are absolutely off the freaking chart, and wasn't as good a pass rusher as you would think somebody with that kind of athletic potential should be. The one guy from that defense that was that kind of impact player was Devontae White, who also I think had a really good workout, did really well at the Senior Bowl as well, all those kinds of things. But yeah, because this workout would put Travon Walker into the Aidan Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau world, right? If you're just looking at them as athletes and potential, like, he should be right up there with them, but he isn't, because he didn't have anything like the same kind of production. Like, another guy, he had 60 pressures in 3 seasons, which is 681 pass rushing snaps worth. So about the same kind of rush attempts as Jordan Davis, but twice the amount of pressure. But for an edge rusher, that's still not great.
More perspective.
There are guys that had that in a season.
More perspective. Using trusty PFF IQ here, Sam. Real hot on the NFL scene right now, but 149 edge rushers that we have, NFL and NCAA data, right? Guys that have gone on to the NFL. He ranks 134th out of 149, 10th percentile, pure pass rush grade, which again translates very well to the NFL. So I don't know if I'm going to put this in article form at some point. I really think all of these data points, you always talk about sliders, right? Mm-hmm. QB, if the arm strength's up, you could deal with less accuracy and all these different things. All these data points are doing is raising or dropping the player's draft grade, so to speak. So even the guys that had a great combine, you have to look at the production, especially on the defensive line, because it translates very well at the NFL level. You have to look at the production. And even if the production's low, the combine score might move them up a little bit, draft grade-wise, but you can't completely overrate it, and you can't ignore. There are some production concerns for a lot of the players that Jermaine Johnson, also on the edge, worked out extremely well. He's got 1 year of good production. There are production red flags along a lot of these defensive linemen that absolutely tore it up at the combine, or a corner like Tariq Woolen. He's got an explanation, 2 years of the position, but you have to put all this information in there as well.
Can I give you a player that has to have helped himself? I don't know enough about him yet. I'm really genuinely excited to see more of his tape.
Can't wait.
Troy Anderson, linebacker from Montana State.
Yeah.
Now look, number one, Montana State are the Bobcats, and they have a very cool logo, right? So I am all for wanting to like this kid.
This is good analysis.
Number two, he ran a 4.42 at 243 pounds. That's insane.
He flies, yeah.
Yeah, 36-inch vertical, very good broad jump as well. His PFF grades at the FCS level are very good. He's got 2 seasons worth of decent amount of tape. 2019 was good. 2021 was very good, like 80+ across the board in basically every possible facet. I'm excited to see if he becomes one of my guy from the draft along with Calvin Austin. But
I always end up watching linebackers and running backs last. So getting around to a lot of these players. But yeah, it was big. Any other names do you want to highlight coming out of the combine? I want to talk franchise tag a little bit to wrap up the show.
I think that kind of covers all the guys that definitely helped or hindered themselves. I don't think there were that many people that hurt their stock, which, normally you come out of it and you have like an Orlando Brown workout and you're like, this is terrible. Like,
good segue, by the way.
This definitely hurt.
But the Orlando Brown story, which, by the way, transitions to the fact he did get franchised by the Kansas City Chiefs. But the Orlando Brown story is the one that we always need to remember, that maybe the combine's not everything, right? The data points matter. They matter for draft position. They matter for projecting the player to the next level. But they're different for every position. And like I was saying with Travon Walker, or even Jordan Davis, if the production is so low that they have to take a massive jump to be a productive NFL player, then you can't completely overrate the workout and just say, well, this guy's This guy's the next Montez Sweat. This is the next JPP. He didn't show anything like that on the field. Enough. He showed enough flashes on the field. That was Kayvon Chason a couple years ago. Kayvon Chason from LSU, first-round edge defender. If you put on his best 10 plays, looked like Von Miller. The problem is he played thousands of plays and didn't look anything like Von Miller on thousands of plays. You have to be careful with the production stuff. With Orlando Brown, he had the production coming out of Oklahoma. He could run block, he could pass block, he could do the things you needed to do at the NFL level. He just had a horrible workout. And yes, it's a red flag, but Orlando Brown has been fine. He's been very good. He's been one of the best tackles in the league over the last few years. Kansas City locks him up with the franchise tag. The deadline is this week, so we'll see more of those. But Orlando Brown is the first domino to fall as far as the franchise tag goes.
Yeah, which I think made sense. I was coming around to the idea more and more as I thought it out that they can't let him go. Obviously, it would make last year's trade look kind of ridiculous, the sunk costs, and teams hate doing that anyway. But also, what is your alternative? I mean, this year, you go back to the draft and you say, okay, we draft the first-round tackle at the bottom of the first round again. This was the situation they were in a year ago where they decided that the better option was to trade that for Orlando Brown. I think they're in the same situation. I don't think you're going to get the guy you want to start day one at the bottom of the first round range. I think the guys that are going to have that capacity in this draft are going to be gone by the time the Chiefs pick. The free agent group isn't good if Tariq Armstead is out of there, and even Tariq Armstead has a lot of injury history questions. You're not seeing a great or even a good left tackle available. You have the money because you got three guys that are playing for absolute peanuts on the offensive line. So just pay him. Get it done now. Figure out the ramifications down the line.
Yeah, I mean, I think when they made the trade, I think they were anticipating this.
They had to have been, right? Like
franchising and then figuring out the long-term deal along the way. You mentioned you might be able to do 2 franchise tags and then let him walk at the time when you're probably going to have to start re-upping Creed Humphrey.
Right.
And Trey Smith might be a good strategy for the Chiefs. On paper, there's going to be a lot invested in left tackle and left guard for this year, but you can alter that in future years. But the same thing I said during the trade last year, they're paying for certainty, right? And it's even more certain now because Orlando Brown has played in the Chiefs system. The certainty of he's a good NFL player is what they traded for last year. The question was, can he go from a run-heavy Ravens attack to a pass-heavy Chiefs attack? The answer was yes. So now you're paying for something that you're even more certain about, which is Orlando Brown, who's been a top 7 most valuable tackle in the NFL the last couple of years. I think that's worth it. I understand. Again, for the Chiefs, the only thing I hope from their team building aspect is it doesn't take away from adding playmakers. A ton of explosive playmakers or good playmakers to make life easier for Mahomes because he needs it. He's only got Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Now, to make life difficult for opposing defenses.
Yeah.
We're waiting on Devontae Adams, assuming that's going to happen.
Yep.
Now, if Aaron Rodgers breaks the bank, which is the rumor here, a lot of Aaron Rodgers rumors, if he breaks the bank at quarterback and Devontae gets franchise tagged, can they do anything else?
So the timing of the Aaron Rodgers thing, right?
He said he was going to give the Packers enough time. I don't think he has.
He is just a drama queen, right? Like, this thing came out. There was a new tweet dropped that was quite clearly just from, like, the pen of an agent, you know, by one of the insider guys. And it was dropped, like, right at the time everyone was getting hype for the Combine. I mean, that's not a coincidence.
No.
Like, this is this guy. He just wants to be in the news all the time.
Plus, Rodgers hijacked all of our draft coverage on draft night last year.
This is what I'm saying. Like, Rodgers is just that drama queen.
Yeah. You learn from the best, man.
Brett Favre.
You learn from Favre.
I just think it is amazing that, like, there must have been no human being more miserable for that period of time than Aaron Rodgers, right? Sitting behind Brett Favre, watching this guy do his drama crap every year and be like, dude, just go away so I can start my NFL career. Like, stop this crap.
Now I'm going to do it.
Right. So he watches that happen for years at a time, internalizes it, and then 15 years later just repeats the whole strategy again. And people are upset, being like, oh, it's not the same. Wait until he officially retires, you know, whatever. It's the same. It's just done in a different way. Like, he is dropping these nuggets to insiders, like, right at key times just to keep the guy's name in the news. Like, this is just, I'm just amazed that him, of all people, would repeat this playbook, having been, like, the chief victim of it 15 years ago.
Well, the league year starts next week.
Yeah.
He said he would give the Packers plenty of time. He knows the league calendar. He
It's
knows
supposed to be
you need to
tomorrow,
prep.
right? Wasn't tomorrow the deadline somebody put on it?
Maybe. Pat McAfee show tomorrow? Is he on McAfee?
I don't know. I don't know.
McAfee's
Mike
going to be
Silver.
at WrestleMania, by the way, facing Vince McMahon.
Yeah. Mike Silver had a tweet that like it was Bakhtiari's wedding or something over the weekend, so he wasn't going to do it before then. And then like Tuesday or something was the deadline.
Of course, we don't want to take any of the attention away from Bakhtiari's wedding. Could never do that. Jesse Bates for the Bengals. Sounds like he's going to get franchise tagged at safety. I think that makes sense for them.
Yep.
Harold Landry, probably going back to Tennessee if that's the case. Look, the thing about franchise tags is it doesn't affect the cap. It's a 1-year thing, right? Can you handle the cap hit for 1 year from a team building standpoint?
And if you can't, you probably have bigger problems.
You have
than
bigger
that one
problems if
deal.
you can't. But if the Titans do that, that's for 1 year, a lot locked up in Harold Landry and Bud Dupree on the edge. J.C. Jackson for the Patriots will not be franchise tagged, is the
They
report.
seem to be letting him go. That is wild to me. Their number one corner without him is Jalen Mills.
The tag's over $17 million.
It is. It's expensive, but like you need him.
So I think I wonder how much of this is a pivot defensively. I mean, there was a lot of
To
talk.
what? Like whatever it is, you need
Just
him.
more zone and less man-to-man. And
Okay. Your number one corner is still Jalen Mills. I don't care what scheme you're running. That's a problem.
I know. The Patriots, I want to give a quick history of the Patriots at corner.
Okay.
They had a bad defense for a while, early last decade, 2009 through 12 or so. They had a really bad defense. It wasn't bad. It wasn't up to Belichick's standard. They were playing a lot more zone. They pivoted to play a lot more man-to-man. They did it. They cycled through guys who could do it. They traded for Aqib Talib in 2012 and started to play a lot more man. It made sense. They get Darrelle Revis in 2014. This is when their defense started to get back on track, is when they started to play more man, and they stocked up at corner to do that. Revis in 2014. They eventually get Stephon Gilmore in 2017, right? So they Malcolm Butler had emerged in between that time. They always had a true number one corner during that time, all the way up till Gilmore getting traded during the 2021 season. J.C. Jackson emerged. So on one hand, you're banking on Malcolm Butler and J.C. Jackson, two of the biggest undrafted free agents to become stars in the NFL over the last decade. So on one hand, the Patriots made those guys or found those guys, and maybe you have confidence that you can find the next one. On the other hand, the Patriots always had a true number one corner, no matter what, for the last decade. And that was a huge part of their defense. So right now they don't have a true number one corner, and we don't know who that next developed free agent is. So I'm just saying that overall strategy is risky. But the Belichick and the Patriots banking on them finding another one.
They don't just need another one. They need another two or three.
They do need multiple. I'm just saying that they had this top guy, and they used that guy as a top guy tactically.
Yeah,
and then everything have fed off of that.
The entire defense has worked over the last few years because they've had one guy they are certain can eliminate a receiver. And whether it was Stephon Gilmore or J.C. Jackson, that's been the thing that's allowed everything else to function on the back end. And if you're pivoting away from that and you're just playing a quote-unquote regular defense with, more normal coverage assignments where you just play your zone or whatever and do your job, fine. But you still need players that can do that. Like J.C. Jackson is an elite ball-hawking safety that can make – or corner that can make high-end plays in zone or man. Outside of him, you don't have one of those. And you need kind of two or three of those high-end players to survive in today's NFL. So regardless of the scheme you're running, it makes no sense to me to let a guy like that walk, even if you have to pay him a big sum of money to keep him around. Because what is your game plan? Obviously, and Jalen Mills played vaguely okay in that scheme relative to everything else. But the idea that you could go with him, try and get a guy in the low end of the first round to play, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Chris Godwin could get the tag by the Bucs. I think they'd be debating between him and Carlton Davis at corner. But if you get Chris Godwin, if you're the Bucs, do you have to go with Godwin just to keep him and Evans together and keep it attractive for maybe if there's a trade candidate at QB, which, by the way, the trade candidates seem like they're disappearing.
Don't forget, there's the door is still open for Tom Brady.
You have to keep the you have to keep things attractive for Tom with the light on.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting situation for Tampa Bay now because nobody's closing the door on Tom Brady coming back. But you close the door the second you find a real alternative at the position, right? Like if you treat now as we have no quarterback, we need to go get a quarterback, and you go trade for a Russell Wilson, well, then obviously you can't bring Tom Brady back. So the idea that Tom Brady, if they believe that there's a real chance that Tom Brady reverses his decision and plays again next season, if you think that's a thing, you kind of have to stall for the entire offseason and therefore not have an alternative, a viable alternative. Like if you do that and Brady decides to stay retired, you're starting Kyle Trask for better or worse. Like that's your option. Or, you know.
Yeah, I don't think they're banking on Brady coming
Or
back.
you're picking up like whoever's left at the end of the offseason once Brady finally decides in September he's not showing up, right? You make a call to whoever's still on the street, and that's your starting quarterback. Neither of those seem like great options. So
do you just keep feeding Brady like OTA schedules and
but what I'd be like
keep him on the email chain, you know?
Given that dynamic, like what is the percentage chance you would have to think Brady comes back in your mind for you to basically treat that as a real option?
50 plus.
50?
Yeah.
So if it's 50-50 that Brady comes back, you would be okay with basically
rolling
not
the
doing
dice.
anything in the offseason and hoping he comes back.
I honestly, I just don't know what the opportunities are. I mean, if you say bring in a Marcus Mariota as like a cheap starter,
that's not keeping you from Brady.
That's not right. But
cheap though, depending on the contract.
It would have to be cheap. Him or Jameis back or whatever that is. Find one of the Trubisky. You find one of those guys.
There's like hype.
There's a lot of Trubisky hype. God. Probably straight from the Trubisky camp. But there's a lot of hype. I'd be intrigued by Trubisky as a backup. I would want him on my team just to see, like, did he
backup? I mean, look, there's no quarterback. Yeah. Well, no, that's not true. There's actually quite a lot of those. There's a lot of quarterbacks you could sell me on as a backup, and particularly reclamation project backups. There's also a bunch of quarterbacks that I think just have no business taking NFL contracts outside of being a coach.
Right.
That's a different thing.
Anyway.
But, like, he's being talked about as a starter.
Trubisky.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's where we are in the NFL. I always say, is this guy a top 32 quarterback with Trubisky? I think it's borderline. He's close.
Yeah.
But I think Mariota's in there. Winston's in there.
Did
They're
you
top
see
32.
did you see the house that Matt Nagy is selling now that he's no longer a Bears coach?
I did not.
It's like a mansion. So actually, it basically looks like Neil's house, but if he built a basketball court, branded Bears stuff. That's what we're talking about here.
Oh yeah. Nagy's basement had all his like.
So he still has the play sheet wall. That's still there in the house. I don't know where this is, but there's a locker room where there's like a small, but with like Bears lockers, right? Bears colored lockers, and then he has a half basketball court, a half court with branded Bears stuff. So the man was all in. Whatever you say about like the job he did, he bought into the Bears things. Like all that entire house is branded Bear stuff.
Did you get like Ryan Poles? Like, hey Ryan, what do you think of this house?
As luck would have it, one has just come on the market.
Man, we should buy it and do our podcast from there.
Apparently he bought it for like $2 million or something. They're now trying to sell it for like $7 million. So
well, you know, the market's cooking.
I think he's also done some improvements, such as the basketball.
That's true. It wasn't Bears branded previously. There's going to be some super fan that's going to go there and also burn those play sheets. Anyway, the other one that was in, do you see Mike McDaniel's comments? They were asking him about Mike Gesicki. Mike McDaniel, head coach of the Dolphins. Mike Gesicki. We expect Mike Gesicki to block and to play tight end. I mean, felt like he was just like, look, when we franchise tag Mike Gesicki as a tight end, just know that in our offense, he's a tight end. He's going to block. We expect him to do everything that a tight end does. I think Mike McDaniel was tactically commenting on Mike Gesicki, future tight end, so they could tag him for under $11 million rather than close to 20.
I never even thought about that actually as part of this argument. That what happens if the guy gets franchise tagged by a different regime?
The next team,
than the one, right? Than the one that previously was playing him in a completely different spot.
McDaniel's got if like, I don't know if these things go to arbitration or to court or anything like that. Because if they do, Mike McDaniel's just like, look, he's my next George Kittle.
I mean,
Look how we use Kittle.
Gesicki has a genuinely great argument for being tagged as a wide receiver. He played like 93% of his snaps or something as a true wide receiver, either out wide or in the slot, and not. Remember when they did this with Jimmy Graham before, and part of the argument used against him being tagged as a wide receiver was that he used to line up in the slot, as in a 2-point receiver stance, but he was basically like a yard from the tight end, right? So technically you're in the slot, but you're lined up as a tight end here. Whereas Gesicki, when he lines up in the slot as a receiver, is not attached to the formation. Like, he's genuinely in the slot running slot receiver routes. So if you were looking at the last couple of years of every piece of information you have for Gesicki, that's a really good argument to make him a wide receiver, not a tight end, in designation. But but in Mike McDaniel's offense, that's irrelevant. Like, what do I care where he played in the old regime? For me, he's going to line up where George Kittle is, and he's a tight end.
And I think they're going to tag him. And we'll see. Look, it's going to happen within the next 2 days, right? The deadline. So I think what we'll do here is the Daily will cover the franchise tags this week. Daily will cover the franchise tags and what they mean. We're going to get back on track with fixing your team in 5 minutes, Wednesday and Thursday this week. So we have to do the NFC. We'll fix your team in 5 minutes, LOLJK. Go check out the AFC versions. We already have those on the feed. And then next week's free agency. Next week we'll have a full free agency preview on Monday. All of that stuff will become irrelevant as soon as we finish recording, of course. But we'll just, we'll talk about what happened over the weekend and all the news. And then it's full free agency next week. We'll have plenty to talk about.
Yeah, and hopefully at some point during that run, we'll be alive again and have recovered.
Yeah. I got till Wednesday to get the voice back. Of course, we have dailies, but,
yeah.
For the big show, got to get the voice back by Wednesday.
All right.
This is better than it was yesterday, I believe.
A little bit.
A little. Creeping back toward average here, voice-wise. By the way, Amari Cooper also on the trading block.
Yes.
And the Cowboys working on a long-term deal with Michael Gallup.
And cutting him. Cooper.
Yeah.
Because
when you say you're going to cut him and then you want to trade him.
Yes. And it's like, hey.
Trade value is not high.
Right. Dude, the Zeke contract is crippling that team. It's like.
Zeke, you just said. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like.
But they just don't want. It's not a money move for Cooper. They don't want him as part of the team. They're upset with him. They don't want him on the team.
But it's because he's earning $20 million. Like. They're upset that his production is not matching the $20 million that he's bringing in.
This is the second team, though. Didn't the Raiders sour on him too?
Yeah, but
the perception that he's not clutch and he gets nicked up and
this is
come up.
This is like you always kick down, like something happens to you, so you take it out on somebody beneath you in the pecking order, and then they go and like hit the dog or whatever, right? And it just works its way down the hierarchy. Like Dallas can't take their upset at the fact that they're paying Zeke Elliott a giant ton of money to do nothing. They can't take that out on Zeke because his contract is locked in for a while, right? They can't get rid of him without a giant amount of pain in terms of dead money and on salary cap issues. So what do? Well, you take it out on Cooper. Look at this bum. This guy is earning $20 million. He's not doing anything for us. Like 700 yards. What's that? Let's get rid of him. Whereas really the guy, it's projection. The guy they're really mad at is Zeke, but they're stuck with him. So Amari Cooper gets the crap thrown his way.
There's some truth to that, but I think, Raiders fans and Cowboys fans and the regimes.
But fans are different. Like fans
but I think the regimes have also soured on Amari Cooper. I think it's a second organization that has soured on Amari Cooper and thought wide receiver one skills, but not put it all together. What? What are you reading that's intriguing you?
There's somebody's posted something on Twitter that's called Intangilytics.
I know, I saw it.
Which appears to be real, not a bit. And it's ranking Kayvon Thibodeau and Chase Young on a spider graph of what appear to be intangible craziness. So
wow, Austin really.
Achievement striving, grit, positivity, leadership, empathy, curiosity, self-discipline, action-oriented, conscientiousness, and adaptability are the points on this graph, all of which, as far as I can tell, are completely intangible and arbitrary and no earthly way of being able
I don't think
to quantify.
I don't think he had a test. I don't think he tested the prospects on these things. So.
No. Anyway, the upshot of this was there's no red flags for either player.
This was Kayvon versus Chase Young?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've moved on from radar charts, spider charts, too. The analytics people don't like them. Deceptive. They're deceptive. I used to love them.
Yeah.
I've moved on.
And now that you got...
And that's the least of the problem.
You've been bullied by the nerds. Again.
A little bit. Anyway. PFF, what's our promo? NFL Pod. Promo's NFL Pod. You get 25% off anything. Before you leave on YouTube, 25% off. Go get it. NFL Pod. Draft Guide. We'll have some updates on that. But 365 days of access. And only the NFL Pod. Only we can give you 25% off. So use that promo code. NFLPOD. For any PFF subscription. All right, we've run our course here today.
Okay.
How was my Jordan game?
Well, I mean, we made it to the end. It's probably better. So I think you split the difference between Jordan's flu game and Andrew Hawkins' flu game that he tweeted about.
Yeah, he was saying he thought he was going to have it in the playoffs.
He got ill just before a playoff game against Houston, to the point where they had to move him away from A.J. Green. They were sharing a room. They had to take him away from Green in case they got Green sick. Obviously, that was their important guy. And he was tweeting that he was so convinced that he was going to have a Jordan flu game, right? He's going to go out there, feels like crap, and just dominate, be the story. And he said he had 2 catches for 14 yards and a fumble, and they lost the game.
Everybody wants their Jordan flu game. Hey, I didn't fumble, so that's good. You're right. In between that and Jordan.
Yeah, you split the difference.
Fair enough. Good job, Hawk.
On the fairway.
Anyway, thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll be back Wednesday. We're fixing all the NFC teams this week.
When you ramp up the intensity and the volume, that's when the voice really starts to cling by a thread.
That's why I thought I would have a Kirk Cousins voice crack. I thought I'd get loud at some point. It would go haywire. All right, no more talking until Wednesday. See you guys.